just being kind to yourself, really, working. And it is, as you sort of said, it's that cusp of when something is uncomfortable or fatiguing or, and no, you've got to know your own, you've got to give yourself time to know your own body, and celebrate the things it can do. Not always, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. You've got to just think, okay, that might not be doing what I want at the moment, but I can do all this other stuff. When I want to, I'll be, when I can, I'll get back and it'll be there again.
Welcome to another episode of Big T, Little T podcast. Today I am joined by Joanne Cobbe. Hi, Jo.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good, really good.
Back from your wonderful retreat. Jo, before we kick off the podcast, you can tell us more about that retreat. But before we kick off the podcast, can you just give everyone a quick intro, just so that those who don't know will now know who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Joanne Cobbe and I own and run J Pilates, which is a Pilates teacher training company. And it's more than just teaching your initial Pilates qualification. It's got all the equipment, but also additional workshops so that we keep everything fresh, up to date, and you can just enhance your original learning as well. So, yeah.
Brilliant. And then you said, and so I was just saying how you just came back from a retreat. How was that? So how many retreats have you done so far?
I've done them for about 5 years now. So I generally do them in Spain, just because I love Spain. And so it's a little mini retreat for me, but it just means it's a week long and it gives me time to sort of really be with teachers, to enhance, to look at what they really want to delve into. And it's time for them as well. Because often, your life sort of ends up just teaching other people, and your own education, your own movement can sometimes take a little bit of a backseat. So it's just a way of, just having a week of just in Pilates heaven. And we have chefs, so you don't even have to cook. And it's the most gorgeous villa ever with 2 swimming pools, but by the beach. Yeah. Do I need to say more?
No, I'm mentally, I'm now there. Sounds absolutely amazing. And I can so resonate. I mean, that's pretty much sort of what the conversation's about today, isn't it? Sort of stress management. But yeah, definitely as a Pilates, with my Pilates instructor hat on, it is so important to have that time carved out for yourself, because we do all this wonderful work for other people. We know the power of Pilates, and sometimes it's just not always managing to carve out that same time for yourself. And I'll share a quick, so before Pilates, before I even knew what Pilates was, I knew what yoga was, and I used to always do yoga, and then I used to do both, but I only ever taught Pilates, and that'd probably always be the case. But I went to a yoga class for the first time on Monday. I haven't done yoga in literally years. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, first of all, it took me ages to switch my brain off from being a Pilates instructor. Because I was like, how can I modify this and put it into a Pilates class? It's like, no, you're here for you.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I was like feeling like a beginner again, of like, I used to be able to do all these different things in yoga. I know that's not what yoga's about, or I don't think it was Pilates about, but there's things I used to be able to do flexibility wise, moves wise, that I couldn't do. And then things that I just literally didn't understand. And I was like, ooh, this makes me feel like a beginner again, which was really humbling and made me think about, this is what it feels like to be a beginner, not just like, oh, it's a little bit uncomfortable. I was completely confused. So I was like, but what are we doing?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when one of the first days on the retreat, I say to people, I want you to leave your ego at the door. And I mean that in a really kind way. But we often are like, I'm a teacher, I should be able to do this, I should be going here. And, I sort of say, leave your ego by the door, focus on the sensation, not the performance. Nobody's judging, nobody's thinking you should be able to do this because you're a teacher. This is just a week for you. And it, as you say, it can be quite humbling. But when you're being honest with yourself, suddenly you find that progression, you find that deeper work, because you're not closing yourself down, and hopefully not being hard on yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then once I love that, leave your ego at the door, because and what it then allows for is just the teacher, she literally said, be patient. And when she said that, I just softened. I almost got quite teary, because I was like, oh, that's so true. Like, what am I doing? What am I trying to rush into or rush back to right now? And it was kind of like, remember why you're here, which was I just wanted to do something different with my body, different type of movement. And once I let all of that go, then it was just like, this is a fun challenge, but also it's a fun exploration, and also this feels really nice, and it changed the whole sort of vibe for me.
Yeah. No, it sounds amazing. And I do think we need to do things like that more. Just switch off, not think, I'll be able to use this in my next class. I'll be able to, just do it just for you. Yeah.
Love that. So that leads us nicely into. So I've sort of designed this episode as sort of three parts, and part one is stress management. And I guess one of the things that I love about Pilates is, I always say, it can be meditative. It's not meditation as such, but I find it to be very meditative. How would you say, Jo, that Pilates can contribute to overall relaxation and stress reduction?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, understanding our bodies a little bit can help in this, in that, our bodies are incredible. We naturally have systems in place to help balance ourselves, okay? To help us stay safe, happy, calm, and so on. And those two of the systems are your parasympathetic response and your sympathetic response, the nervous system. And so a little bit of understanding that can really help us get into that sort of stress management help that Pilates can give us. So we've got the sympathetic response, which people call your fight and flight, which to me is almost a little bit, it makes you automatically think it's a bad thing. And okay, it is there to sort of help us stay out of danger, to help us react to dangerous situations, to stress and so on. But it also happens when we work out at high intensities. It's a phase of our system that helps us have better endurance, better strength, react quicker, move faster, all those things. And then its opposite is the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms us down. It's our rest and digest. It restores us back into that calming phase. And those two balance each other. I think the problem comes when you are staying in that sympathetic state, that fight or flight. And a lot of it's just to do with the amount of, information we're constantly getting, levels of stress at work, just all that sort of constant noise that I think our lives can really be, we're in at the moment. And so what we can do is think about that parasympathetic nervous system and encourage its response by doing things in Pilates classes which are perfect for it and bringing us down. So, things like our breathing. The quickest way to drop down and to encourage that parasympathetic state is to breathe through your nose. So that's first thing, it's really simple. If you ever find that you're wanting to just slow down a moment, just calm down a minute, just start breathing through your nose. The next thing is lying down on your back. So that grounds you, it makes you feel safe, it makes you feel secure, it gives you lots of support. So immediately Pilates is there because we focus on the breath, we focus on just being calm, not necessarily being still, because I find it really hard to be still, but just sort of like, the sense of calm that will bring, because you're feeling safe, you're just allowing yourself time. So that to me is what Pilates can really bring. And I think if you're looking to go to Pilates to get into that calm state, that meditative state, help your stress, you need to be looking at working at intensities that allow you to just keep that breath focused rather than going into the higher stuff. You've got to choose the level of exercise you do in order to encourage that, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And I can't remember which workshop it was of yours that I attended, Jo, but I remember taking that away. And I have to admit, I've never quite put it into practice in teaching when in my classes, but the starting on the floor, because when you walk into a Pilates class as an instructor, everybody's sat down and then we get everybody up and we start doing roll downs. And I need to, mental challenge for myself is to not try to just once not start my class with roll downs, and actually what can I do to start people off on the ground, because like you said, it's a wonderful way to literally ground yourself and quite get someone into a more relaxed state.
Yeah, and the thing is, as soon as you feel more relaxed, more calm, the body starts dialing down, you will actually find better mobility because you're going to move smoother. You're going to move, with a greater range because the body's not rigid. It's not holding you. You're letting go. And so that's where, Pilates is so powerful that to me is the genius of Pilates, that we can work at higher levels, but we can also just really help pull people back down. So I think often as teachers, we have to consider why people are coming and what do they need. And also sometimes times of day of classes can change, just the emphasis you can put on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point as well. Times of day. Because two of my physical classes at the moment are in the evening. So yeah, probably another cue for me to be brave and start off on the floor. Not go back to my good old fable.
Finish on the floor. Finish on the floor.
We definitely finish on the floor. But yeah, because I'm gonna next Monday, my Monday class, I'll be doing it, and I will let you know how that goes. But yeah, so thinking about that, when people are coming from usually their busy day, so a lot of people are coming from work when they come to classes, or sometimes if people are literally at home, they're, switching off or closing down one program to log into Zoom and do their Pilates classes. What practical strategies or tips could you offer for people to explore when they want to transition from that busyness of the day and then sort of head into a Pilates session? So what things say if they've got a teacher like me that starts them standing up, what things can they do before they even get to the class?
Yeah, so first of all, just give themselves a moment to think of their breath. So, if you, before you even log on or at the big, while you're waiting for everybody else getting their mats out or whatever in an in-person class, just lie down on the floor. Feel how it's supporting you, and then start thinking about breathing through your nose, breathing in through the nose. You can breathe out through the mouth, through the nose, whichever you prefer. But also take the breath 1 to 2. So you breathe in, say, for 2 counts, but you breathe out for 4. And then you can increase that. You can breathe in for 3 counts, breathe out for 6. But what that does is it begins to start dropping you down into this, relax, digest, rest sort of state, and allows those stresses to just veer away a little bit without losing focus on yourself. Because I think that's one of the things with Pilates where it's different from other disciplines, is that you continue to think about your own body movement and how you're moving and so on. But the meditative, I can't even say that properly, state
That's a lot.
comes in from the joy of movement. So you stay conscious, you stay mindful of your movement, but the breath allows you to almost get into that meditative state, but still stay mindful. Does that make sense? You're not switching off. You're not switching off, you're switching in. And that to me is the difference. Yeah,
because I think when we're talking about parasympathetic drive, as I understand it, you've got sort of 2 levels of it. So you've got sort of your your ventral vagal, which is safe, connected, I'm alert, but I'm relaxed. And then you don't want to get someone going all the way down into that more dorsal parasympathetic drive, which then feels like I don't even want to now move at all. So it's like finding that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes maybe some people do need to do you know what I mean, drop down, and that's in a class. I had a class recently where and she was a teacher, and it was just glorious to see. She actually did get into that really lower state and just started moving so much slower than everybody else. She almost started doing her own thing, and for me, I was like, it doesn't matter that she's just, her eyes closed, because that's what she needed at that time. So, I just let her freestyle, do her own thing. And at the end, she was just like, I've never gone into that zone. And it was glorious. So for me, I didn't want to pull her out because I was like, do you know what? That's what she needs at this moment. But it was fascinating to see.
That's such a lovely feeling as well. But I would say that's still in your ventral vagal, because it sounds like she was still connected to herself.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe deeper into that ventral vagal than she's ever been, or maybe been there for a longer time, because sometimes people can dip in and out of it. But actually sounds like she was able to stay there for the whole class, which is an absolutely beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Wow. And I love a freestyler.
Yeah.
I always invite people to freestyle because I'm like, literally, if something doesn't feel right, also you're going to freestyle. But also sometimes you just intuitively need a certain move, or you've just done a move that you just, oh, I really needed that. If you were doing that class at home, like say if I'm doing a Pilates class and I'm watching one of yours, for example, I'll pause there and I might stay there in a particular move and explore it a bit more. But if you're in a live class, you can't really pause the class. So, I always invite people to go back to a previous move if the next one isn't for them, like just honouring what it is that they might need in that moment. I think that's so important.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I think that's where the teacher should be. Do you know what I mean? Because we're there to provide for the client. Sometimes I think we're like, no, that's my plan, that's what I'm doing. Whereas actually that flexibility, that creating that space to allow somebody to freely do what they want to do is really important. And I think we should consider that more sometimes. Yeah.
I think we're so used to classes looking a certain way and everyone flowing in, which it does look very nice, but then that's the ego, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a synchronized swimming.
Yeah, definitely.
I think now I've got my Pilates teacher hat on again. Well, it's come from two places actually. So sometimes, and I see this around some people who are close to me, and those people know who they are. Sometimes a person can be so stressed out, but they actually don't realise that they're stressed. Maybe because they live in that state a lot of the time that they don't even recognise that as being, stressed out or, in that sort of sympathetic drive. I spot it on the mat. I spot it generally because it's part of what I do, but I'm very in tune to those things as well. But I often see it on the mat. And I think now about sort of roll downs, how sometimes I'll see a roll down happen. It happens in that sort of jerky way where they come up and then the shoulders are back up here again. I'm just wondering, what other ways can people, so maybe those who aren't always so tuned in or aware of when they're stressed out, what are some other ways that sort of shows up on the mat?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I notice it in is just breath. That inability to just take that full breath, even though you're asking people to, they just, it's almost like a block and they can't, they're like, and even when you start talking about slowing down the breath, that's when they're like, I feel like really lightheaded. I feel as though, do you know what I mean? And it's almost that real struggle to change the way they breathe, or they hold their breath. So going into the move, you'll find you'll be sort of like, just breathing out to allow yourself to roll down. And it's like, and then the roll down happens. It's like the breath isn't associated with the movement. And so I think that's one of the quickest things to try and key into is just, okay, I actually want you to, I mean, one of the things I've done is, you breathe through a straw, like Joe's breathalyzer machine, the little straw, and just allow that breath to just go longer. So, I mean, often it can be really fun because we don't all have his breathalyzers, but you could just get, as like a kid, you got those pinwheel thing, or those things with like the ball that you have to blow into and the ball like pops up in the air. Did you ever see those?
Not every day, but I know what you're talking about.
So, and so you get them to just breathe and they have to keep the little ball up in the air. I'm going to have to look at buying some of those. So next time I see you, we'll have a little...
That's content right there, Joe. I mean, that needs to be one of your reels. They'll fly off the shelves after that.
Logoing up, bit of a sticker. Great.
Brilliant.
But I just think, it's taking the time. And the other thing is whether people want to take the time. Because some people, we say to them, we need to, and they can almost fight against you. Do you know what I mean? That it's almost like a protective thing. It's like, no, I'm fine. And it can be quite hard to encourage people to find that let go. It's almost like if they begin to let go, they feel everything could fall apart. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, because after all, we talked about the different nervous states of the autonomic nervous system, and these are survival states. If we're there for too long, then it's a survival state. So if someone is used to being in that state, asking them to almost stand down can leave them feeling quite vulnerable and not quite ready for that. But I guess it's, I guess again, it comes back to that leaving your own, my own expectations at the door and allowing the client, meeting them where they are, because they just might not have the resources to do that right now, because who knows what's going on for them outside of the class.
Yeah. And that's where I think, as a teacher, you can have those like I always do, I love homework for people. So just like a little audio of a breath pattern or a breath exercise, and it's there for them when they want it. Maybe they might not do it in the class at the moment with you, but they might just think, do you know what, I'm going to try it before I go to bed at night. Or do you know what I mean? So yeah, I sometimes think you sort of like leave that door open, and when they're ready, they'll come through, sort of thing.
I love that. I think that's such a good idea. And yeah, it's a resource that they have when they want to do it, as opposed
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
this hour of a day that we've allotted to them to now you do it. You know, you do it, yeah.
Let me watch you. Let me watch you.
Yeah. And I'm watching you do it, and if you don't do it right, I'm going to let you know. You know, there's no doing it right, but that's what can go on in the mind, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you know, one of the first things people say about Pilates is, "Oh, the breathing drives me mad. I can't get the breathing. I can't." You know, I mean, we don't want that. We want that quality of breath, not you know the wheres and the whens. But yeah, I'm going to watch you breathe now. You're like, oh, I used to be able to do this really naturally. Now it's just gone really weird.
I've been breathing all my life. What are you telling me? Oh, brilliant.
Does it give me a six pack? Oh no.
Will to activate my core.
Oh.
I had to get it in there. I was actually, just to go off on a bit of a segue, I was thinking about the time when I was new to you and the C word, which is core. And I used to have a t-shirt that it was a vest top that I just bought from Gap, and it said adore your core. And I had a moment last night where I was in bed, I was like, what is that vest top? Like, did I throw that away? I probably threw it away because you did not approve of it. So I probably was like Joe said, no.
It's gotta go. It's gotta go.
I'd forgotten all about that. Oh, that's so
walking
funny.
into class with your hand just there, hiding the
Go in
word.
with tape over the word core. Adore your what? Well. Brilliant. And so I think we've probably covered this, but just I guess are there any other ways that Pilates can be modified so it's more about relaxation? I remember years ago I used to teach a class in a church hall. Oh, missed that class. And we got to a point where we were using music, piano music. I don't know. Well, I guess I'm thinking of like, what are some ways that people can modify a class as a Pilates instructor or people doing it from home to make it more relaxing?
Yeah, I think sometimes when if you know your Pilates, like, so say you're at home and you know what a roll up is, stop thinking about I've got to get to here. Just really key into the sensation of the movement. So we were working on this a lot last weekend on my mat work training. And it's about, you've got to just think how it feels. So instead of saying, okay, you're going to make your C curve and you've got to make this shape, think about how it feels internally rather than it constantly being an external performance or shape. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So allow yourself just to sort of sink back into the sensation of the movement. And so you don't take the movement to where it feels restrictive or anything, just find where it feels epic and work there. And maybe that is going to then take you away from your higher levels or where you think you should be going. And instead you just think, okay, what is going to feel great? So say you're doing a simple move like roll up and you just start letting the hips open and soften. I'm doing it now. Sorry, I'm doing it with you. Do you know what I mean? And so you don't take it to a point where you're beginning to grip against gravity. You're just letting yourself soften through the movement. And it's that sensation. So, when you're teaching, say to people, how does it feel? Does it feel that you're opening, elongating, softening? Just using our vocab, I think, and encouraging people to think of how it feels rather than how it looks. And I think that goes on to being a teacher. You know me, I'm not a big fan of demos all the time from the teacher, because I think then the class try and be you, and you want them to feel how it feels for them. So who cares if you get to the floor or not? if you felt great getting to where you got and then you pulled it back up. Do you think that would work?
I think absolutely, and I'm so with you there with the demo side of things as well, because it is just that thing of, or you see people sort of looking to others in the class to see what it's supposed to look like, as opposed to, and I guess it comes from them. That's sort of a journey of learning to trust your own body and connecting with it in that way, which might be new to some people. But yeah, I love that. I love that sort of slowing it down and actually feeling the sensation. I love that. I think it's a really good point. The sensation of it as opposed to how it looks. And I think Pilates is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, and I think it has a certain aesthetic about it online. And I will always mention this when I talk about Pilates, but I think sometimes that can create a sort of a false image in someone's mind of what this is quote unquote supposed to look like, as opposed to what it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole essence of what Joseph Pilates wanted. He talks about, the internal work. It's from the inside out. And to me, it's never about the aesthetics. I don't care how far your leg goes. It's the movement going through it and how you feel going through it. Everybody should feel great after a class, not sort of like, oh, I still can't get this, and I still, we don't need to beat ourselves up about it. It's about how you're moving through that really should be the focus, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving into sort of injury management, and this will all sort of link up, because I see a connection between the three parts of this talk. Thinking more about injury management, what can someone who's looking to start Pilates as part of their injury recovery, what can they expect?
Yeah, so I think, well, the one thing I'd say is splitting injury and pain. So injury is very different from pain management, I think, especially if the pain is persistent long-term pain, because then you've got a very different scenario. You've got very different potentially factors to look at and try and help. So say somebody's got, and the easiest way to, I think, to sort of split the two is an injury for me is where you're within the time frame of tissue healing. So as a teacher, I think you should know the sort of average-ish time that certain tissues take to heal. So a broken bone, 6 to 8 weeks. After that, is it an injury, or is it more that you're helping somebody deal with a more persistent pain scenario? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, things like a tendon can take a long time to heal. You're looking at sort of like 12 to 18 months. This is very average, but it takes a long time for those sort of tissues to heal. So for somebody coming in with an injury there, that is when that's your focus. Great. Anything more than that, and I think you have to take your viewpoint much wider into lifestyle factors and so on. So for me, what I think Pilates really offers with an injury, say if somebody's got an Achilles tendon injury or something like that, is they'll come to you, and what Pilates is amazing for is it's a whole body integrated workout. So every exercise we do, yes, the injury might be in a certain place, but you're looking at above and below it through the whole body to see if there's any factors that have brought about the injury due to an imbalance or an alignment issue above and below. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
To me, sort of like we create the environment that allows the body to heal itself. So say if somebody comes in with that type of injury, they're going to know what they need to be doing, to sort of help improve that injury. And we can Pilatesize it, I always think. So say if somebody comes to me and they've been told to help with that ankle injury, they've got to do calf raises. So I'll Pilatesize it. So I'll ask them what they've been told to do. And then I'm like, okay, we can do a shoulder bridge lift up, and then you can lift and lower your heels. Do you know what I mean? So I sort of bring in their rehab work into the class, because everybody's going to enjoy doing that anyway. Maybe not enjoy it, but they're going to find benefit from it. But then because we've got our Pilates lens, we can look and see, okay, is that ankle injury due to them not maybe using the mechanics of the foot right? Could we help strengthen the foot a little bit more? Could it be coming from their hip? Could it be that they're not having a great range or strength within the hip? So that's where I think Pilates is great, that we can sort of help people at the level that they come to us with an injury from, say, a physio, and we can make those exercises a bit more Pilates-ish, or we can then we can widen our lens and look at them as a whole body movement, so that even though the injury manifested in that place, it could actually be due to something else that we can help strengthen.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely spot on, because I mean, I know for sure for me, I've had this hip thing going on, Joe, for a long time, and it's definitely impacted what my rib cage does. It started out with me thinking there was something wrong with my knee, which I was like, my knees have always been fine. This can't possibly be my knee. It was the hip. So extra work for the knee to do. And then I realised my rib cage was stuck on one, or not stuck, it's a bit of exaggeration, but not moving very well. So yeah, it's that thing of we can't just sort of hone into where we feel, or even where the injury is, we can't just sort of hone into that. There's usually something else going on in the body somewhere, which is just that bit of exploration that we can do on the Pilates mat.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but at the same time, and this is what I think can be quite nice to the Pilates teacher, you never forget you're a Pilates teacher for me. So I teach Pilates, but I'm looking and I'm thinking, oh, do you know what? We can try this. Does that help? Maybe yes, maybe no, we can try something else, because they're in that safe environment. You know, you're not taking them into a painful position. You're working within their comfort area, you know, and just sort of, just creating movement and just letting the body do its thing. But you're encouraging so do you know what I look for actually? Is I look for either strength deficits or joint restrictions. That's the two things I look for when I'm looking at somebody coming in for whatever reason, and it's an injury rather than persistent long-term pain. I just want to really make that clear, because we can't fix people. But what I can look at is, okay, so say for you with your sort of knee, we could have just looked at, see if your hip, is there as much range as the other side? Is there a strength deficit? That's sort of like what I think we do. But when it goes past tissue healing and you're getting that persistent long-term pain, I think that's when obviously it's not just a quick fix. You're not a car that we can just, that needs changing, that needs taking up and
oil that joint. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where you've got to look at all the multifactorial things that come into the complexity of persistent long-term pain.
Yeah, and pain is so complex, and I couldn't even begin to go into it. But one of the things that, again, from a very personal perspective, what I could notice is that sometimes it's just doing the movement or doing something relaxing, not sitting down all day or whatever it might be, then that pain has suddenly gone, which I find really fascinating. So a lot of it can come from that, whatever kind of stress you might be under. But yeah, like you said, there are often very specific lifestyle factors that need to be looked into, as opposed to just... When it comes to pain, though, because that's the other thing I think about of injury, when there are those weaknesses there and you start to challenge those muscles to strengthen them, it can feel that pain can be quite intense, but it feels, in my opinion, somewhat yummy. It's that yummy intensity of like, this feels like something's good's going to come from this. What are some ways that people can sort of differentiate between, and it's going to be so individual, I think, the answer here, but what are some ways that people can differentiate between that restorative pain sensation and maybe I shouldn't be doing this pain?
Yeah, that's really hard, because that is really individual, and often it's really interesting because it can go back to how your relationship with pain. And often it can go back to how you were brought up as a child. This I got from a really good podcast of Silvates, and the guy really, Josh Brown, I think his name was, he was sort of saying, if you were, as a child, if you were allowed to go out, learn to skateboard, go off, climb trees, fall over, you sort of get used to scraping your arm, banging your knees. It's painful, but it's fine. It's just like, oh, you grazed yourself again. And then you've got the other side where you're very, as a child, you might have been told, don't do that, you'll hurt yourself. Stop doing that, don't do that, and it's very much stop because you're going to hurt yourself. You will have a very different relationship with pain than somebody who has gone out, broken an arm, knows it heals. And so I think it's so hard because you just have to watch people and try and sort of know how they're going to be with pain. I also think it's very to do with the part of the body where the injury is, because if we, tweak a hamstring, you're like, oh, just pull my hamstring. Lower back, and there's that catastrophizing of sort of like, oh, my back's gone, I can't move. And it's amazing our relationship with different body parts and where we feel pain and how we react to it. So for me, I always say to people, especially when they begin classes and they're coming in and they are a little bit nervous, I'll say to them, I want you to take today as a gauge. And after the class, within that 24-hour window, because generally there's that 24-hour window, if you find that you've been a little bit more discomfort than you are happy with, we know to dial it down next week. If you find that, okay, I could feel it, but I felt great, perfect to me, I'd be like, then we know we can stay at that level or we can progress, go a little bit more intense. And so it's always a conversation, but I always let them know that it might go up, it might go down. Do you know what I mean? I don't ever promise you're going to be fine, because otherwise I think you then get, oh, if it hurts, let's put you down, let's stop, like you're lifting your head up and the neck starts feeling tension, put your head down. Instead of thinking, hang on a minute, why is it feeling tension? Could I stay here a little bit longer and just see or can I do something else to strengthen my neck to stop feeling that tension? Do you know what I mean? I think so often in a class we can tend to just omit instead of either sit there for a bit or, or think, okay, I need to strengthen there. Would that make sense? But I think you've always got to see how you feel personally, how confident you are. But I think you've got to put the emphasis on the person. You decide, and we can, let's have a chat tomorrow. Let's have a quick text. Let's see how you are. But just know you might feel a little bit of discomfort, or you might feel fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like any other, I guess, practitioner that we might go to for injuries and things like that. So if we go for massage, we sometimes are okay with the fact that we might feel a bit more sore in certain places. Or if we go see physio and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been kicked around. But we expect that and we know that that's something that's going to, fade off, and actually ultimately it becomes a good thing and a helpful thing for the body.
Yeah, definitely. I just think as a teacher, so it depends on how you are as a teacher. Some teachers understandably get really concerned about people being injured in their class. But I think if you constantly use your language to ensure that people make their own decision, then you're doing all that you can and they make a choice. And that autonomy is really important, that it's a choice, yeah.
Well, yeah, really important that people have their own body autonomy. And I guess you have to feel, if we go back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation, about have to feel somewhat relaxed and feel safe enough to make that movement. Because if you make that movement from a very tense and afraid place, and it's likely then to maybe aggravate something, might actually aggravate something.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, exactly that. If I've got somebody who's coming to me with hip pain, I'll work on the foot. I work on their feet. I won't say, okay, let's look at your hip then, because that's where they're like, this is really painful. And automatically their alerts are going to start kicking up. Whereas actually looking at the feet, looking at the knee, looking at the shoulders, you're still going to be moving the hip, but you've sort of like moved away from that oasis of alertness. Do you know what I mean? But
done it again. Yeah.
This is a really calming word. I don't want to, but you know what I mean? That point of concern for them, you've moved away from it. And then you can sort of look and say, okay, so how we're actually doing a shoulder bridge. They're focusing on their feet, but that hip's moving really nicely. And actually then afterwards they're like, oh, wow, my hip felt great, but they weren't gripping, ready for pain to kick in or flare up or something.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other common sort of, so that I think it was really important there where you made that differentiation between pain management and injury recovery. Are there any other common mistakes that you see that people might make? Other ones we've highlighted a lot here, but any other sort of mistakes you see people people make when they're thinking about working with people with injuries?
Yeah, I think impatience. I think looking for results really quickly. You've got to give time. You've got to give the body a chance to heal, and that impatience can be really. You've got to try, especially, if you're the type that you want to go back to your sport or you want to get back to what you usually do. You've got to let the body find that progressive loading, that progressive, movement back to its normal range and strength and so on. So it's really just giving that time, and being kind to yourself, and just sort of saying, just take it easy. And, you can push a little, but you've got to give yourself time as well.
Yeah, patience, and just, because that's how the body heals. And I think another thing that I took away from from the winter convention, where we did the little taster of the pain workshop, which I am fully signed up for, by the way. Of that, how when a muscle is weak, it's going to fatigue quicker, and that not being a sign of something is, not a sign of failure, as it were, that you're going to failure, but it's like, it's not a sign of you failing or not being good at something. That's how the muscle is going to heal and get stronger. The fact that you take it to that point of fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. And there's loads more we're going to do on that. Yeah, exactly. And just being kind to yourself, really, working. And it is, as you sort of said, it's that cusp of when something is uncomfortable or fatiguing or, and no, you've got to know you've got to give yourself time to know your own body, and celebrate the things it can do. Not always, I can't do this, I can't do that. You've got to just think, okay, that might not be doing what I want at the moment, but I can do all this other stuff. When I want to, I'll be able to come, when I can, I'll get back and it'll be there again.
Yeah. Be kind. I think that's a really good takeaway. Yeah. So proprioception is the other thing I wanted to talk about. So again, it's like, so we've looked at how, ways that people can manage their stress and how Pilates can help with that, and how that even helps with people who are trying to recover from injuries. And the other thing I think about with injury is proprioception, and also how wonderful Pilates is in helping that. With my Pilates instructor hat on, sort of proprioception, like knowing how you hold your body in space, or you'll give a better definition, I'm sure. And then from a nutritionist perspective, again, it's that sort of how we can work with proprioception and interoception, and sort of understanding and connecting to our bodies in different ways. So knowing when we are feeling, this is more interoceptive, I suppose, when we're feeling hungry and things like that, but looking at all the different ways that our internal communicates with the external, and then communicates with the internal, that sort of lovely flow that we have in connection with the world. But Jo, I'll let you describe what proprioception is and how Pilates helps with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, as you say, it's that body awareness where we are, but it's not just a static thing. I think a lot of people think it's a static thing, but it's with movement. It's your proprioception is that constant loop of feedback running from, the body parts into the nervous system, telling us where we are with movement, how fast we're going, how slow we're going, if we're going forwards, if we're going back, if we're going up, if we're going down. So it's not just position, it's also that it's with movement. It's your balance. It's one of the balance systems of the body. It gives us our coordination. So Pilates can really, really help with that, obviously, because we're looking at that body awareness, that alignment, how we are in space, how we're moving. But I think the biggest mistake that's made when we're looking at proprioception is people take away sensory feedback. So they think that balancing on one leg increases your proprioception and will help your balance. But what you've actually done is you've taken away sensory feedback into the nervous system. And so you've made your proprioception harder. And sometimes we've got to go the other way. So when I begin to work with somebody to increase their proprioception, I actually give them more feedback. So looking at using different textures, looking at, say, if you're looking at the feet that they stand on, like, say, you get like little artificial grass mats or like bubble wrap, or, that will increase proprioceptive feedback. So therefore you're improving the system before you go on to challenge it. Does that make sense?
That is such a good idea. I would never even thought about the textures underneath the feet, actually. So I love that.
Under your hands, when you're lying on your mat, give yourself a different texture. So that's where we need to start from, is encourage proprioceptive awareness, and then you go on to challenge it, which is where you might, and again, to increase your proprioception, ground people. So get them to pull on the floor, get them to push into the mat. You've got to use that sensory sort of developing your clear foundations when you're on the mat. So if it's on your feet, you use your feet. You don't just stand on them. When you're on all fours, you're sort of like, the knees, the hands. A simple move like one leg circle is actually great for proprioception, especially if you put a different texture under the back of the pelvis, because you then sort of feel that, that difference there. And you're not making somebody stand on one leg, which, going back into how the nervous system is, put somebody standing on the leg, they're like, whoa, and everything's going to go on to high alert. So you want to sort of start there, I think. And then you can then start challenging proprioception. And if you think that, your balance comes from 3 systems of the body, you've got proprioception, we've got visual, and we've got vestibular, which is your inner ear, and obviously the eyes. If you take one of those away, so simple enough, your eyes, proprioception has to work harder. So instead of so that's when you begin to challenge proprioception. So for me, you can take something like your one leg circle, which is not a particularly high intensity move from a balance perspective, you think, and then close your eyes and do it. And something as simple as that, you're just like, what has happened there? And you start feeling things more. And that can nicely go back into our sensation movements. The sensation of it, rather than, okay, I can see my leg, it's not straight, my knees bend, everybody around me's got a straight leg. It goes into the sensation of the movement, which is perfect to link back into all the things we've chatted about, where we want some people to work. Yeah.
Yeah. And what other I love that. I love the idea. It's interesting as well, because I think it's things that you might do intuitively as well. I definitely know within my own, I see it in students as well, but people who attend my classes, like sometimes someone will be moving almost entirely with their eyes closed. So yeah, I see that sometimes. So I do that a lot intuitively in my own private practice as well, of like my own private practice, my own personal practice, where I might close my eyes if I want to have like a really sort of connect with myself sort of situation on the mat. But I see it a lot in my classes as well, where you'll see someone pretty much, particularly at the beginning of the class, I find, closing their eyes whilst they're doing the movement, which I always think it just looks so relaxing. It looks wonderful, but also it's nice because it does feel like they're just tuning into themselves. If you've got your eyes closed, again, like you said, you're not looking around at what other people are doing or what your leg's doing. And
I actually think that's a real compliment to you as a teacher, that somebody can do that. But seriously, because it's like, it's a huge compliment that you've created an environment where they feel so safe and so at ease that they close their eyes. I think that's a huge compliment.
Nice. There we are. So look out for more eyes closed then. No, don't get egotistic about it. No, I love it. And so what would you say are the main then, so we sort of talked, thinking about how this all sort of links together, what are the main benefits of enhancing your proprioception?
Do you know what, for me, it's not just that whole thing that you get better balance and you get smoother movement and you're more coordinated and so on. It's the fact that you are at ease in your own skin. I know that probably sounds a bit, but do you know what I mean? It means that you are able to just feel at ease, feel confident in your movement, be able to navigate your way through, it sounds a bit much, but life, but knowing that you are efficient in what you're doing, that you're well balanced, that you move smoothly. That probably sounds a bit ridiculous, but that's to me what I want. I don't care whether you get your roll up to the mat or not. It's that whole just, I think sometimes people almost feel they're battling against their own bodies. It's throwing things up that they're just like, I've got headaches, I can't sleep. Do you know what I mean? And you almost become very separate from your physical body. And I think doing things like this just really can pull it together, and yeah, you're in it together. It sounds ridiculous. I don't know if I'm sounding ridiculous here, but
no, I don't think so at all. And I think a lot of people listening to this podcast episode would completely resonate with that, because I think we are bombarded so much external that someone even forgets, literally who they are. And it can disconnect a person from their body. So I think that's a wonderful sort of quote unquote buy-in for someone to think about improving their proprioception, because if that's something that you struggle with, not trusting your body, feeling uncomfortable in your body, constantly comparing either yourself, either comparing yourself to a past self or yourself to others, that could be a nice way just sort of to bring it home.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that is, I think it's one of the most fantastic gifts we can give somebody, or not even give them, we're not giving them, allow them to find, is that love of themselves and how they are at that point in time. I think there's so much of trying to be better and trying to do things better, and sometimes it can just be such a gift just to go, this is where I am, look at that, it's awesome, and that to me is feeling that balance and that coordination, and that just knowing where you are is just great.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And so linking it back then, and tell me if you've already answered this, how does proprioception fit in with injury rehabilitation within the Pilates framework?
Yeah, I think often when we've had an injury or there's been pain, we disassociate ourselves from it. We sort of either get very scared to move that area, or we almost like block it out, or that sort of thing. And so I think moving in within those areas, finding that awareness, finding that coordination, just ties it all back in together. I think, say something like with a hip replacement, you need to again find the proprioception of moving around the hip, because movement patterns will have changed, will have adapted to pain, to discomfort, to injury. And so working on awareness of how the joint should move, we want it to move, can move, is really, really important. So yeah, that's where it would tie in for me.
Yeah. And then are there any things that a person can do outside of the Pilates class or Pilates environment to improve their proprioception?
Yeah, I would just think about where you're touching the earth. That sounds silly, but when you're walking, walk with your feet. Do you know what I mean? Don't just get to a point. Think about how you're interacting with your environment is really what I would say. I'm always barefoot. The weather now, barefoot, going around, getting your shoes off. Me in shoes, socks, and Pilates.
I know. I didn't want to bring it up, but I know.
But you just touching, thinking of touch, thinking of, just using what you interact with your environment with, and just being a little bit more aware of it, I think, is what I would do, rather than doing like exercises. Just thinking when you're, doing that. And you can always try and brush your teeth with your other hand. Yeah.
But yeah, that is the classic one though, isn't it? The brushing the teeth with the other hand. And this isn't me getting at anyone, by the way, because I know a very wonderful Pilates instructor who not too long ago posted that video. So I think that is a wonderful thing to do. But there are other ways.
We can leave out the cleaning the teeth thing.
No, leave it in, because I think people are going to find ways to do what works for them.
Yeah, stupid things.
Absolutely love it. Okay, Jay, so the new thing that I've started doing now is asking people for their fun fact or random fact. And so I wonder, do you have a random fact or fun fact that you'd like to share with us today?
Whether it's fun or not, I don't know. But did you know that we all know like our bones are constantly remodeling and changing and so on. That the adult skeleton more or less remodels itself, or almost all of it, every 10 years.
Every 10 years?
Every 10 years, you have a new skeleton. I know. So that means I'm on my fifth body. I was like, what, my fifth skeleton? But isn't that amazing? But I love that.
That's amazing.
Because it sort of means that if you're like, oh, don't like the shape of my leg, you're like, I'm getting a new one. or do you know what I mean? You don't feel you're strong enough or fast enough or whatever. You're constantly changing. You're constantly evolving. We're constantly remodeling ourselves. And so, yeah, I love
that. I love that. I love the idea that maybe in 10 years' time, then I might have a whole new hip. Although I don't think there's anything wrong with the bone, to be honest with you. But anyway, just...
But it is that thought. And I think especially as we get older, we sort of feel we're breaking down.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, things are just degenerating. But if you sort of think, well, as long as your nails are growing, your hair's growing, you're constantly rebuilding, remodeling, regenerating. There's hope for everyone.
There's hope for everyone. Give me a Megami hip. No, love my hip. Bless it. It's trying its best. But Jo, this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I know people are just going to love it. There's so much that people can take away from this. Just so that we know, where can we find you online and all of the wonderful work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm like at jpilates.co.uk, Instagram at jpilatesuk. And really, if anybody's got any questions or if I can ever help in any way, just give me a shout and see if I can help in any way, really.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Jo. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.